The story begins with Mama Grace placed the fresh bread on the kitchen table like it was made of gold. The sweet smell filled their small apartment, making everyone's stomach growl with hunger. Nobody touched this bread, she warned her 3 children. It's for the visitors coming tomorrow. But after Mama Grace left for the market, 10-year-old David stared at the bread like it was calling his name. His stomach made loud noises. He hadn't eaten since morning, and dinner was still hours away. The bread sat there, golden brown and perfect. Just one slice wouldn't hurt anyone, right? David looked around. His elder sister Ruth was doing homework in their shared bedroom. His cousin Victor was outside playing football with neighborhood kids. Nobody was watching. He tiptoed toward the table, his heart beating fast. The bread was so close now he could see the soft inside through the small tear in the wrapper. His hand reached out slowly, fingers almost touching the plastic bag. Just one small piece, he whispered to himself. Mama won't even notice. His fingers wrapped around the bread, feeling its softness. Creak. The front door began to open. David froze, bread in hand, as footsteps approached the kitchen. His heart pounded so loud he was sure whoever was coming could hear it from outside. Aunty Sarah burst through the kitchen door like a hurricane. Mama Grace's older sister had always been the family's strict disciplinarian, and today her eyes blazed with the fire of righteous anger. David, she screamed, her voice shaking the entire apartment. What are you doing with that bread? David stood frozen, the bread still clutched in his guilty hands. His mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, but no words came out. So this is how you'll lead us into poverty? Aunty Sarah continued, her hands flying in dramatic gestures. Your mother works day and night to put food on this table, and you want to steal the bread meant for guests. But Auntie, I'm hungry, David finally managed to whisper. Hungry? Hungry? Aunty Sarah's voice rose even higher. When I was your age, we ate once a day and thanked God. You children of nowadays don't know suffering. Ruth rushed out of the bedroom, drawn by the shouting. Victor abandoned his football game and ran inside. The whole compound could hear Aunty Sarah's voice. You want to eat visitors' bread like a common thief. What will people say about this family? David's eyes filled with tears. The bread felt heavy in his hands now, like evidence of a terrible crime. Suddenly, they heard Mama Grace's footsteps on the staircase outside. Your mother is coming, Aunty Sarah hissed. Now you'll explain to her why you want to disgrace this house. The front door opened, and Mama Grace walked in, shopping bags in her hands, completely unaware of the drama waiting for her. Mama Grace set down her shopping bags and immediately sensed the tension. David stood in the middle of the kitchen holding the bread, tears streaming down his face. Aunty Sarah's hands were on her hips in the universal pose of African aunties ready for battle. What's happening here? Mama Grace asked quietly. Ask your son. Aunty Sarah pointed an accusing finger at David. I caught him stealing the visitors' bread. This is what you're raising, a common thief. David's voice came out as a desperate whisper, Mama, I just wanted one slice. I'm so hungry, and my stomach has been paining me since morning. Ruth stepped forward to defend her little brother. Mama, David hasn't eaten anything since breakfast. We're all hungry. But Aunty Sarah wasn't finished. That's how it starts. Today it's one slice of bread. Tomorrow he'll sell the entire bakery. Next week he'll be stealing from neighbors. Auntie, please, David sobbed. It's just bread. Mama Grace looked at her youngest son holding the bread like his life depended on it. She saw the hunger in his eyes, the desperation of a child who had learned too early what it meant to go without. But she also saw something else. The bread represented more than food. It represented respect, reputation, and the thin line between surviving with dignity and falling into shame. The room fell silent as Mama Grace walked closer to David. She pointed at the bread in his hands, her voice shaking with emotion. "So this is the reason your late father's spirit cannot rest in peace." The words hit David like lightning. Even Ruth gasped. Aunty Sarah's anger melted into shock. Mama Grace's words hung in the air like smoke from burning wood. The mention of their late father brought back memories that still hurt like fresh wounds. "You see this bread?" Mama Grace continued, her voice breaking. "Your father started this small bakery with his last savings. Every loaf we sell keeps his dream alive." David had never known the full story. He was only 5 when Papa Moses died, too young to understand why Mama cried every night or why they moved to this small apartment. "After your father died," Mama Grace explained, "people said I should remarry. They said a woman can't run a business alone. But I refused. This bakery is all we have left of him." Ruth wiped her eyes. Even Victor, who usually joked about everything, stood quietly. "Every bread we sell pays for your school fees," Mama Grace continued. "Every loaf puts food on our table. When you waste visitors' bread, you waste your father's sacrifice." David's hands trembled. The bread felt heavier now, weighted with responsibility he had never understood. "But Mama," he said, his voice tiny and desperate, "I'm just hungry. And it's just bread." Mama Grace looked at her son's innocent face, remembering Papa Moses's words, "Grace, if our children ever go hungry while bread sits on our table, we've failed as parents." She raised her hand, and everyone expected her to slap David for his disrespect. Instead, she covered her face and burst into tears. Her sobs filled the kitchen, raw and painful, carrying years of struggle, loneliness, and the impossible weight of raising 3 children alone. The bread fell from David's hands as he realized his small action had opened his mother's deepest wounds. By evening, the small apartment was packed with relatives who had heard about the bread incident. Word traveled fast in their neighborhood, and family drama was everyone's entertainment. Uncle Emmanuel sat in the corner, shaking his head at the chaos. Cousin Joy whispered with Ruth about taking sides. The adults formed a circle around David like judges in a courtroom. "This boy needs discipline," declared Aunty Sarah, still the loudest voice in the room. "Grace is too soft on these children." But Uncle Samuel, the family joker, couldn't help himself. "Aunty Sarah, if bread can cause this much trouble, imagine if it was goat meat. We'd need the police." Some relatives laughed, but Aunty Sarah wasn't amused. "This is not a joke, Samuel. Respect and home training are serious matters." The debate grew heated. Some sided with David, saying children should never go hungry. Others supported Aunty Sarah, insisting that discipline builds character. Then Aunty Sarah dropped her nuclear bomb, "I think David should go to boarding school. Away from this house where nobody respects boundaries." The room went silent. David's eyes went wide with terror. Boarding school meant leaving Mama Grace, leaving Ruth and Victor, leaving everything familiar. "No," he shouted, jumping to his feet. "I won't go. If you send me away, I'll run away first." His declaration shocked everyone. This quiet, gentle boy had found his voice at the worst possible moment. "You see," Aunty Sarah said triumphantly. "Stubborn and disrespectful. Boarding school will fix him." Uncle Emmanuel stood up slowly. "Wait. Before we send this boy anywhere, let's hear what he has to say." That night, David couldn't sleep. He lay on his mat listening to his sister Ruth breathe softly beside him. Through the thin walls, he could hear adults still arguing about his future. "Boarding school will kill that boy's spirit," Uncle Emmanuel was saying. "Better than spoiling him rotten," Aunty Sarah replied. David made up his mind. If they wanted to send him away, he would leave on his own terms. The next morning, while everyone was still sleeping, David packed his few belongings into a black nylon bag. 2 school uniforms, his mathematics textbook, a small bottle of water, and a pack of Gary his grandmother had given him. Victor, who shared the boys' corner of the living room, opened his eyes as David crept toward the door. "Where are you going?" Victor whispered. "Away," David replied. "Before they send me to boarding school." Victor faced a difficult choice. Should he wake Mama Grace and stop David? Or should he let his cousin escape the family drama? "David, wait," Victor said, sitting up. "Running away won't solve anything." But David was already at the door, his hand on the handle. A knock at the door, knock knock. Heavy banging on the front door made both boys freeze. It was still early morning. Who would visit so early with such aggressive knocking? "Open this door," a deep voice shouted from outside. "I know someone is inside." Victor recognized the voice immediately. It was Mr. Emeka, their landlord, and he sounded very angry. David slowly opened the door, still holding his packed bag. The landlord pushed past him into the apartment. "Where is Mama Grace? I need my rent money now." Mama Grace emerged from her bedroom, tying her wrapper and trying to look dignified despite being woken up by shouting. "Mr. Emeka, good morning," she said calmly. "Is everything all right?" "Everything is not all right," the landlord replied, waving a piece of paper. "Your rent is 3 months behind. I've been patient, but my own landlord is threatening me." David watched his mother's face change. The worry lines deepened around her eyes. "Mr. Emeka, please give me 2 more weeks. The bakery business is improving. I'll have your money." 2 weeks. Mr. Emeka laughed bitterly. "You said that last month. I need 40,000 naira now, or you'll find your belongings outside by evening." Aunty Sarah and Uncle Emmanuel woke up from the noise. Soon, everyone was gathered in the small living room, watching their family's private shame become public. David's stomach twisted with guilt. While his family struggled to pay rent, he had been worried about bread. While his mother worked day and night just to keep a roof over their heads, he had added to her stress over food. "Mama," he said suddenly, his young voice cutting through the adult conversation. "Let's use the bread to save us." Everyone turned to stare at the 10-year-old boy. Uncle Samuel burst out laughing. "David, my boy, bread can't pay rent." But David was serious. "Mama, if we sell more bread, we can make the rent money." Aunty Sarah rolled her eyes. This child still doesn't understand reality. Mr. Emeka checked his watch impatiently. "I don't care about bread or business plans. I want my money by evening, or everyone leaves." As the landlord stormed out, Aunty Sarah turned to Mama Grace with grim satisfaction. "Unless you have a miracle hidden somewhere, hunger will finish this house." At school that morning, David's problems followed him like shadows. Mrs. Helen, his class teacher, called him to the front during morning assembly. "David," she announced loudly enough for all 200 students to hear, "your school fees are 3 months behind. When will your mother pay?" David's face burned with shame. Other students giggled and whispered behind their hands. He wanted to disappear into the ground. "Ma, my mother said next week," David replied quietly. "Next week? That's what you said last month." Mrs. Helen's voice carried across the entire assembly ground. "Tell your mother that education is not free. If she can't pay, you should stay home and help her bake bread." The entire school erupted in laughter. "Bread boy," someone shouted. "David the bread thief," called another. David ran to his classroom and hid behind his desk, tears stinging his eyes. His best friend Michael found him there during break time. "David, don't mind them," Michael said. "My father also owes school fees." "But they didn't announce your father's debt to the whole school," David replied. "What will you do?" David wiped his eyes and looked at Michael with new determination. "I'm going to prove them all wrong. I'm going to show everyone that bread can change everything." "How?" David leaned closer and whispered, "Michael, I will turn bread into gold." His friend looked confused, but David's eyes burned with the kind of fire that changes destinies. At 4 in the morning, while his family slept, David crept into the bakery section of their apartment. He had watched Mama Grace work countless times, memorizing every step of the bread-making process. But David had his own ideas. Instead of plain bread, he added extra sugar to make it sweeter. He mixed groundnut paste into some loaves for extra flavor. He even tried adding small pieces of coconut to others. By 6 a.m., he had baked 12 loaves of David's special bread. "David, what are you doing?" Ruth asked, finding him arranging bread in a basket. "Business," he replied with a grin. He carried his basket to the street corner where children waited for school buses. The sweet smell attracted attention immediately. "Bread. Special sweet bread." David called out, copying the style of street vendors he had observed. Within 30 minutes, all 12 loaves were sold. Children fought to buy his special bread, saying it tasted better than anything from the shops. David counted his money, 800 naira. More than he had ever held in his life. As he walked home, excited to show Mama Grace his success, a black car stopped beside him. A well-dressed man rolled down the window, holding one of David's loaves. "Young man, who made this bread?" "I made it, sir." The man took a bite, chewed thoughtfully, then smiled. "Wait here," he said, pulling out his phone to make a call. "Hello, boss. I found something interesting. A young baker with real talent." "Yes, sir. I think we should meet him." The man introduced himself as Mr. Johnson, manager of ShopRite supermarket in Ikeja. He had been searching for local suppliers who could provide fresh, quality bread for his stores. "Young man, this bread is excellent," he told David. "How many loaves can you make daily?" David's mind raced. "How many do you need, sir?" "If I stock your bread in my supermarket, I'll need at least 100 loaves every day. Can you supply that?" 100 loaves. David's head spun with calculations. That would mean thousands of naira every day. He ran home, bursting through the door with excitement. "Mama! Mama! Come and see!" Mama Grace emerged from the kitchen, flour on her hands from her own baking. "David, where have you been? And whose money is this?" "I sold bread, Mama. My own special bread. And this man wants to buy 100 loaves every day." Mr. Johnson had followed David home. He explained his offer to the stunned family. Aunty Sarah, who had been preparing to cook breakfast, dropped her spoon. 100 loaves, she laughed. "Where will this small boy get 100 loaves? We barely make 20 loaves a day." Uncle Emmanuel scratched his head. "David, my boy, business is not child's play. 100 loaves means serious work." But David wasn't discouraged. He looked at his mother with confidence that surprised everyone. "Mama, I know we can do it." "David," Mama Grace said gently, "making 100 loaves needs more equipment, more ingredients, more workers." David smiled mysteriously. "Mama, I already started." He pointed outside where Victor was helping 3 neighbor women carry bags of flour into their compound. "I asked them to help us. They agreed to work for 20% of the profits." Everyone stared at the 10-year-old boy who had organized a business partnership before breakfast. Within a week, their small apartment had transformed into a bustling bakery operation. The smell of fresh bread filled the air from morning till night. Money started flowing in amounts they had never seen before. But success brought unexpected problems. Ruth felt left out because everyone focused on David's business. "Why is my small brother suddenly more important than me?" she complained to Mama Grace. Aunty Sarah wanted to control the money. "Grace, you're too soft to handle this kind of business. Let me manage the finances." Uncle Emmanuel suggested expanding too fast. "We should borrow money and open a real shop immediately." The family arguments grew louder each day. Everyone had opinions about how to run David's bread business. David watched his success divide the people he loved most. "If we don't work together," he told them during one heated family meeting, "this bread will scatter us instead of bringing us together." But the adults were too busy arguing to listen to a child's wisdom. Then, on a Tuesday evening, their biggest test arrived. A wealthy businessman knocked on their door, wearing an expensive suit and driving a Mercedes-Benz. "I represent Lagos State Catering Services," he announced. "We want to buy your bread business. I'm offering 2 million naira cash." Everyone's eyes went wide. 2 million naira was more money than they had ever dreamed of. "But there's one condition," the businessman continued, looking directly at Aunty Sarah. "We insist that Mrs. Sarah must manage the business, not Mrs. Grace. We prefer working with more, experienced people." The offer hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. 2 million naira. Financial freedom. But it meant Mama Grace would lose control of her late husband's dream. "What do you say?" the businessman asked. The family stared at the businessman's briefcase, knowing it contained enough money to solve all their problems. But David saw something the adults missed: accepting this offer would break their family apart. "Sir," David said politely, "can I ask you a question?" The businessman looked amused. "Of course, young man. If you buy our business, what happens to my mother? She can work as a regular baker. We'll pay her a good salary. But it won't be her business anymore." "No. It will be ours." David looked around at his family. Mama Grace's face showed the pain of losing her husband's legacy. Ruth looked worried about their future. Victor seemed confused by the grown-up discussions. "Aunty Sarah," David said, turning to the woman who had caught him with bread just weeks earlier, "please remember what you taught me." "What did I teach you?" "You said stealing is wrong. You said taking what doesn't belong to you makes you a thief." Aunty Sarah frowned. "What does that have to do with this offer? This business belongs to my mother. Taking it from her, even with money, feels like stealing." The businessman shifted impatiently. "Young man, this is a generous offer. 2 million naira is serious money." David walked to the kitchen and returned with a fresh loaf of bread. He broke it into pieces and gave one to each family member. "Auntie, please," he said, looking directly at Aunty Sarah. "It's just bread. But it's our bread. Made by our Han. In our father's memory, with our mother's love." He took a bite of his piece. "Money can buy many things. But it can't buy the feeling of working together as one family." Mama Grace stood up slowly. She walked to the corner where Papa Moses's old apron hung on a nail. She had kept it there since his death, unable to throw it away but too sad to wear it. Now she lifted it down and put it on. "Mr. Businessman," she said with quiet dignity, "thank you for your offer. But this bread will feed the nation only if we stay one family." She looked around at her relatives, her voice growing stronger. "We'll expand slowly. We'll make mistakes and learn from them. We'll argue and make up. But we'll do it together." The businessman packed his briefcase, clearly disappointed. "You're making a mistake. You'll never make 2 million from selling bread." David smiled. "Maybe not, sir. But we'll make something better." "What's that?" "A family that stays together." As the businessman left, Aunty Sarah walked over to David and knelt down to his level. "You know what, small boy? You're smarter than all of us adults." She hugged him tightly. "I'm sorry for shouting at you about the bread. I was wrong." David hugged her back. "Auntie, thank you for catching me. If you hadn't stopped me, I would never have learned what bread really means." 6 months later, their bread business had grown into the most popular bakery in their area. They still lived in the same small apartment, but it was filled with laughter, love, and the sweet smell of success earned through unity. And David? He became known throughout their neighborhood as the boy who turned hunger into hope, one loaf at a time. This folktale teaches us that sometimes the smallest issues reveal the deepest truths about family. Unity, trust, and wisdom are worth more than money or pride. When we choose understanding over blame, ordinary struggles can turn into extraordinary breakthroughs. David's story means that hunger is not just about food, it's about belonging, respect, and love. When families work together, even the simplest things like bread can become the foundation for greatness. Most importantly, we learn that children often see solutions that adults miss because their hearts are not yet hardened by disappointment and fear. The next time someone in your family makes a small mistake, remember David and the bread. Ask yourself, am I looking for punishment, or am I looking for understanding? Sometimes, the best lessons come wrapped in the smallest packages. I have some questions for you. 1. If you were David, would you have eaten the bread or obeyed Mama Grace? 2. Do you think Aunty Sarah was right to be so strict, or did she go too far? 3. Should the family accept the investor's offer even if it divides them? 4. What lesson do you think students can learn from David's creativity with bread? 5. If bread symbolizes survival, what bread does your own family protect? Drop your answers in the comments, let's hear your thoughts.